back, WNST, Charleston, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour. This week, I'm wearing my State Fair gear only because I don't have a classy, upscale Beaumont shirt to wear, but maybe I will by Thursday. Evan Brown and the crew, I should say, over in the 21228, including Don Moeller, welcoming us to the Beaumont. Lots of guests will be there from 2 until 5. We will be at Costas in Dundalk next week. And we had a blast up at Pappas on Friday. One of a former press box associate of this fellow, Mike Bordick, joined us at Pappas on Friday, as did Leonard Raskin and Jim Rees and some others. Luke Jones was high on a hill up to Pittsburgh on Sunday. Luke, I'm going to publicly fall on the sword and say that all the 53 years of my life, I didn't think I would be skipping December Pittsburgh Baltimore Ravens games, but alas, my hip is getting better, my back is getting a little better, but I don't know about the Ravens right now, bro. At 8-4, we should be feeling ourselves. You came fingertips away, literally, from stealing the game, winning the game. Harbaugh goes cowboy up on the confluence, and you have a much, much happier ride down the mountain with Bo Smolka than perhaps you did late night on Sunday.
Well, I think, Nestor, what really came to mind as this game comes to an end and the Ravens fall, and you just said it, they're fingertips one play away from doing it again, right? Another 66-yard field goal, another Lamar Jackson looking like Dan Marino in the fourth quarter type miraculous ending. It really just felt to me like a market correction. How many times have we talked this year about the Ravens winning games that, frankly, they probably didn't deserve to win? On the flip side, this is one that it felt like they should have won, felt like they were in control most of the way. I mean, my goodness, look at the time of possession, especially in the first half. It was extraordinary. And yet it was 7-3 at halftime. And you just knew, you just had that feeling that if you left them in the game long enough, and sure enough, Pittsburgh came through. And in the fourth quarter, it was a different looking Ben Roethlisberger, a different looking Steelers offense. But
yeah, you were going to say, you said leaving them in the game, leaving Roethlisberger in him out
sure,
there under center is different than Duck, whatever his name is, or Mason, or Charlie Batch, or, Ryan Mallett, for crying out loud. Like, it's Ben Roethlisberger. The game's in the balance. I didn't like our chances at the end.
Well, I mean, and it comes down to this. Look, anyone who's watched Ben Roethlisberger the last couple of years, he's not the same guy. I mean, he's not. If you've watched him on a weekly basis, he is not the same guy. That said, if you have miscommunication on the back end of the defense and some of those crossers that the Ravens had some issues with, and you have some guys wide open and you're not going to tackle guys, Ben Roethlisberger is still fully capable of taking advantage of those types of scenarios, and that's what the Steelers did. So, I mean, it's tough for me to say anything different about this team that we haven't talked about in previous weeks. And, I talk about it a lot, and, people have heard me bring this up about point differential and looking at DVOA and looking at efficiency metrics. And we've said over and over and over, they've played a lot more like a 500 team in that way. And heck, look at where they were after the Chargers game. They're 5-1. They have that dominant performance. What's everyone saying at that point in time? That they're looking a lot more like 2019. They're 3-3 since then. And we've seen this. And they're pretty good, but they're really no better than what we're seeing across the AFC at this point in time.
Well, they weren't better than the Dolphins 3 weeks ago. They weren't better than the Bengals 4 weeks ago. They weren't better than the Steelers, Sunday. So, you start to look at these games and say, how are they going to brave Buffalo, Kansas City, and Foxborough in January? And quite frankly, they got to go to Cleveland this week and do the dirty deed. And then, Green Bay's going to come blowing in here looking to establish their dominance and try to get a bye and, all of that stuff. This thing's starting to slip away. And more than that, you mentioned things that have changed. The Humphrey injury is, seeing the look on John's face. You were in the room. I was not. He didn't want to talk about it, which told you all you needed to know.
Yeah.
You and I know we know Harbaugh ease kind of sort of at this point, right?
Right. And that's the big thing. For me, the performance itself didn't feel as much that it's slipping away because, as I said, I've felt this market correction was going to come at some point. At some point in time, they had won 6 straight one-score games. That's not how it works. Over the long haul, it's much more of a 50-50 proposition in the same way we talk about one-run games in baseball, that it's going to balance out over time. Now, that doesn't mean you win 6 straight one-score games and then you're going to lose 6 in a row, but it does mean at some point in time that coin's going to stop landing on heads 5, 6 times in a
I
row.
was going to say, it reminds me of
And
that night at the Luxor where I did really well at blackjack, and I thought I would do that way the rest of my life.
right, exactly. So that from that standpoint, it's a disappointing loss, no question about it. But you just said it. What does change, and this is why I've said all along why it was so important that the Ravens got off to the 5-1 start that they did, that it left them some cushion because of what I just said as far as a market correction, and also knowing that just because they've had all of these injuries early in the season in the way that they did, or before the season, quite frankly, didn't mean that they were going to then not have any injuries at all the rest of the way. Now, we haven't seen them have the same crazy rate of injuries as they did, the last 2 weeks of August and then the first week of practice of the regular season. But that wasn't going to guarantee that you weren't going to lose anyone else the rest of the way. And unfortunately, as we found out, and reports leaking out Sunday evening, Marlon Humphrey, whether it's shoulder, chest, pec, AC joint, whatever it might be, it's not good. And the expectation, as we've heard from a number of reports, that he's going to miss the rest of the season, that's not good. To state the obvious, even if Marlon Humphrey, and you and I have talked about this, hasn't played at peak Marlon Humphrey level this year, and I'll stand true to that, it's still a different animal if you're talking about playing the rest of the way with Anthony Averett, Chris Westry, Tavon Young, and a 32-year-old Jimmy Smith the rest of the way, who's not the guy he was even at age 28, quite frankly. So that's a very sobering ending to the evening that goes beyond just losing the football game. So the good news is they are still 8-4, and they are still in first place. And I look at the rest of this division. As much as you like Cincinnati's talent, they're still young. I think Sunday was a great example of that. They completely start the game slow, flat, mistake prone, and the Chargers took advantage and then held on. And Cleveland and Pittsburgh, they've lost so many games at this point, and you look at their remaining schedule, are they going to go on the kind of run that it's really going to take? So I still like the Ravens in that way. I do, and I'm going to stay true to that at this point in time. Maybe I feel differently if they lose in Cleveland on Sunday, but the rest of this division's flawed as it is. The math still looks better for the Ravens right now. Now, does that mean they can win 2, 3, 4 games come January and February? That's where I'm more skeptical. But hey, at this point in time, they've got to figure out a way to start scoring points more consistently. I mean, let's face it, since that Chargers game, they've scored 17 against Cincinnati, 34 against Minnesota in overtime. Okay, that one's fine. 10 against the Dolphins, 16 against the Bears, which I get it. Tyler Huntley played, but they're not scoring much with Lamar Jackson at quarterback right now. 16 against the Browns and now 19 against the Steelers. I mean, you're
And by the
struggling.
way, there used to be a point where the defense was good for 3 or 7 or 10 a week, right? Defense had taken the ball away, and literally, like, the
Yeah.
defense has been no factor in. There's no Ed Reed going on there, picking balls off. We talk about Marlon Humphrey in the strip, and he won't be playing anymore. I mean, it's kind of frightening when you think about their back end without Marlon Humphrey and without Marcus Peters. Like, if you would have told me that at any point this summer, I would have given you the Ronnie Stanley speech I gave my wife last year, which is they ain't winning the Super Bowl without those cats.
Well, I mean, you look at the millions of dollars invested in those two, the Pro Bowls that those two have made that are now sitting on injured reserve, assuming the Humphrey news is as bad
Is
as
Humphrey the highest paid guy on the team? I think he is. I didn't look the numbers, but I'm thinking either this year or amortized. Who's the highest paid player?
I mean, it's tough because they've done so much restructuring. I'd have to, and I don't have the. I mean, I can pull that up in a
If
couple
he's not
minutes.
their best player,
In
you've
terms
had
of,
to hand him team MVP. If it's not Justin Tucker, which is our kicker, which is weird and has been weird for a decade,
yeah,
he's the best player on the team, or not named Lamar at this point. And certainly from a financial standpoint, him and Ronnie Stanley, I mean, these are your number one picks from 5, 6 years ago that pan out, that have to be on the field in the confetti shower. That's the way this works when you take number ones and you give them $100 million.
Right. I mean, you just said it. These two guys they're just a hair under $20 million average annual value players. I mean, other than quarterbacks, it doesn't get much higher than that around the league, unless you're talking about, a cream of the crop edge rusher, the absolute best wide receivers. And, I mean, that's a very select group. So when you don't have those guys, and I'm going to say it right now because I've said it to you for the better part of 5 or 6 years now, going back to that 2015 team. Next man up sounds great, and it's a nice rallying cry. And coaches and players have to say it. I mean, you don't just give up. You don't give in. I mean, you don't just pack it in and say the season's over, but you do get to a point when you are losing the quality and now, frankly, the quantity of players that they've lost as well. That next man up at some point in time does become nothing more than a T-shirt slogan, and it matters. You're not going to replace Marlon Humphrey with someone who's going to do nearly as well as him when he's playing his best football. So doesn't mean the Ravens pack it in, but again, if we're trying to size this up in terms of, first of all, navigating these last 5 games and winning enough, whether it's going 3-2, 2-3, something, at least that, you don't want to go any worse than that, right? But there's doing that. But then there's also positioning yourself to actually do something in January. The idea isn't just to get there. The idea is to do something when you get there. And that's where it is tough looking at this, just how, as it's presently constructed, because of the injuries, because of the inconsistency. I mean, you have an offense right now that, while it's still moving the ball for the most part, and they're able to sustain drives. I mean, my goodness, first half time of possession was 23-30 to 6:30. At the 2-minute warning in the first half, Pittsburgh had run 10 plays. That's unheard of to have that kind of disparity, but they didn't have a whole lot to show for it. I mean, you look at the halftime score and it's 7-3.
Well, the pick was brutal. I mean, the pick, we'll sit here. We'll talk about the 2-point play at the end. We'll talk about all that, the decision, and the fact you're talking about cornerbacks and who Harbaugh trusts. He basically threw himself into the media room and said, well, I didn't have any cornerbacks to play. Well, the cornerbacks on his team probably are thinking, well, that would be me. And now I guess they're going to go to the street this week, right, to do whatever you do the first week of December to try to get it back in. Willie Gaston might be available. I think of these names of 20 years ago of guys that I met and sat with for 5 minutes and thinking who the cornerbacks are going to be. But Lamar, right? I mean, we're going to talk about Lamar, whether it's the 2-point, whether it's getting in the phone booth, whether it's how great a player he is, or what you surround him with, or drops, like open drops, or just bad quarterback play on his part, missing crossing routes, missing receivers, holding the ball too long, getting sacked 7 times. I mean, on and on and on. Lamar's not playing well, and Lamar's not surrounded right now. I always say this, by Marshall Yanda or Ronnie Stanley, either the Hall of Fame or the Hall of Really Good, right?
You just said it. And as much as we try to point to other things that are going on, let's be very clear here. There are a lot of things wrong right now with this football team in terms of deficiencies, whether it's because of injuries or just things are not doing well. At this point in time, the numbers don't lie. This is a quarterback who's not playing particularly well and hasn't for a while. And that's not to say that Lamar Jackson still hasn't played a huge part in their victories. He has. It's not to say Lamar Jackson doesn't still have those X number of plays a game that you just say, wow, he is the only guy in the league who could do that. But the numbers don't lie. I mean, this is a guy that over the last 6 weeks has thrown 10 interceptions. This isn't 1974 where quarterbacks average more than an interception per game. That's not the way it works. Lamar 2 years ago had 6 interceptions all season. It's a big reason why he was MVP of the league. And he deserves full credit for that. It was a phenomenal season. He's not taking care of the football very well in that way. The big thing to me that was evident on Sunday night, as much as people want to beat up the offensive line, and let's be clear, it's not a good offensive line. And you mentioned why. They don't have Ronnie Stanley, their $20 million left tackle. Patrick McCary leaves the game, and they have Tyree Phillips at right tackle. We've seen how that's gone.
Dude,
but
the TJ Watt thing with that kid, that's just That's a
No,
mismatch every time the ball snapped.
no question
And then you
about
don't
it.
have Nick Boyle out there helping either, right?
Right, and he missed Sunday's game and clearly isn't 100%. Didn't practice all week, and they say he's still part of the plans. I don't think they're going to throw in the towel with him, but hey, it's December now. Is he going to be right in 3-4 weeks when you're beginning a playoff run? I don't know. It doesn't feel like that way. But going back to it, Lamar Jackson sacked 7 times on Sunday, and you mentioned the TJ Watt matchup. There's no question. I mean, Tyree Phillips isn't alone there in terms of guys that is not going to be able to match up with TJ Watt and is going to be made to look embarrassed by a guy like that. But of those 7 sacks, I'd say at least 3 or 4 of those, Lamar Jackson's holding the ball way too long. I mean, you cannot just stand in the pocket and from the vantage point in the press box, and look, it's not an all 22 end zone perfect look. There were guys open. There were times where he can make throws or get away and throw the ball away. I mean, I think at this point in time, and I've seen a couple other people make this comment on Twitter, so I don't want to make it sound like I'm the only one that feels this way. The comment that I saw was, it feels more and more like Lamar Jackson is refusing to lose battles to try to win the war. Everyone knows that a quarterback, hey, throw the ball away. Sometimes, hey,
Dude, every time you see this cat in the hat act with him, it happens after the play breaks down. The Roethlisberger would do it differently 15 years ago, but Lamar has done this with his wheels and finding some tight end or wide receiver that just goes another direction, and he sees it. He sees the field well when he gets out of trouble, right? When he gets out into space, he's faster than anyone. He's more elusive, always has been, and he sees down the field to throw the ball or move, and he's never been broken in two, right? He's been doing this since he was 12 years old, and nobody's ever really broken his leg. Literally, or he almost got tripped up on the cable, the third down marker. He stepped on going out of bounds and came up, and I said he's limping. My wife's like, he's limping. I said he's limping. Jim Nance is like, he's limping. And I would just say this with him. That play breakdown thing that he has in getting rid of the ball, it's all he knows, man. It's all he knows. Dirting the ball, throwing the ball away. Go back to history of Louisville. He didn't throw the ball away. He runs like hell, and nobody can catch him. And then something awesome happens. He gets up panting. We all tell him, attaboy, get back in the huddle. And it's always worked that way. I'll tell you what, dude, watching him and listening to these yabos for 10 years tell me Flacco should be more of a jerk and he should scream and purple smoke should come out of his eyeballs and all that. I've watched sports a long time. I'm 53. I was a hothead when I was 14. You know what I mean? I was a hothead when I was 24. Composure, man. Lamar's got a composure issue for me in regard to how this holds together and pounding the ground. They go into and I don't know that they're going to change that. I don't know that he's had a lot of failure, right? And I don't know that this is a failure. I mean, as he would tell you, I came 3 inches from winning the football game. And we would all be talking a different song about Lamar. But I do think when the outsiders, when I go talk to Dan Pompei last week or Howard Balzer, I'll be talking to Peter King and a whole bunch of different people as we get up on this Cleveland game and get up on the holidays. They're all going to look at the outside. We're going to see Aaron Rodgers come in here. We're going to see Stafford come in here. We're going to see these other guys come in here. And he's going to go one-on-one. And on physical ability and on the way he can throw the football and on the special things he has. But when things don't go well for him, how he reacts and how he plays and the light on him, and it's unfair because he doesn't have Ronnie Stanley and Marshall Yonda and J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and let's go Nick Boyle. Let's get down the line. The way this thing was put together, he doesn't have the pieces right now, but he's got to be the leader of this. He's got to be the one that wins the game. He's got to go into the phone booth and put the cape on, and there aren't a whole lot of guys in the league that have that kind of pressure on them. And he has it on him right now, the weight of the world as it is. And I think we can all say he's a little undermanned.
Yeah, I mean, he is. And I mean, to address the part about his demeanor and the side, I mean, Tom Brady has chewed guys out on the sideline before. And Tom Brady's gotten heated before. So, I mean, you don't have to be Joe Flacco or Eli Manning, but I hear what you're saying there, but for me, again, it has nothing. It has very little to do with the injury piece. It has little to do with even that. For me, it's just you don't have to try to hit a grand slam on every single play. You don't have to try to throw the deep ball for a touchdown on every single play. I mean, look at that first drive, the interception. If he takes a sack there for a big loss, guess what? They're still in Justin Tucker's field goal range. So even if you take a sack there and lose a big chunk of yardage, the play's not, it hasn't ruined your drive yet. What does ruin your drive is when you throw it up for grabs and Fitzpatrick picks it off and you get nothing.
And 4 years into the operation here,
Well,
you'd like to. That's regression, is what that is. He wasn't doing that 2 years ago.
he wasn't. He wasn't. You're absolutely right.
He was
And
slipping free 2 years ago and running to the end zone.
but let's also look at the juxtaposition, though. Look at what happened last week. How is that play all that terribly different than what he did on the touchdown to Mark Andrews? He was going back, basically going straight back from the line of scrimmage, and he heaves the ball. Now the difference is Mark Andrews was all alone, and there wasn't a safety waiting for the ball against Cleveland. There was this time, so it's almost a case of now you look back at that play a week ago and say, now it was phenomenal, it worked out, but was that really a sound, great football play by Lamar Jackson there? Or was it a case where the outcome was really good, but maybe process isn't great there, because then you see him do something very similar the following week and it gets picked, and at least 3 points in the bank isn't even there anymore. So he has to play better. He really does. It's that simple. It's not all on him, but hey, this is the guy you're going to be giving a blank check to at some point, whether it's this offseason, a year from now, whatever. They're going to pay him at some point, right? So he still has to be the guy. And it's tough right now. They're missing so many guys, as you mentioned, and that's not going to change for the rest of this season. But the numbers don't lie. He hasn't been playing great football really since that Indianapolis game, and especially these last few weeks. You got to score more than when 19 points is kind of where you're maxing out at over these last few weeks. It's not nearly good enough. And by the way, Lamar Jackson be the first one to tell you that.
Luke Jones is here. He will be there in Owings Mills all week long. It's all brought to you by Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. And Justin Tucker not given the opportunity to hit the game-winning coffee. I do have a little Rofo in my coal roofing mug. All of our WNST Wise conversations. I'm going to have Rob Santonio on. We're getting ready for the holidays here. I'm going to be out doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. I'll be letting myself play. We're going to be at the Beaumont on Thursday from 2 until 5. Don Muller's got a full slate of guests. I've got some surprise guests. The word is Pete Caringi's coming over from UMBC, so I'm looking forward to celebrating. I celebrate all the huge milestones in my life with Pete Caringi. So on the 13th of December, it'll be 30 years of me gabbing on the radio, so we're a week away on that. Next Wednesday, the 15th, will be at Costas in Dundalk. I'm putting together a litany of guests. If any of you feel like you've known me long enough and are from Dundalk and want to come, I don't know, drink beer and eat cream crab soup with me over at and feel royal having some crab imperial over at Costas, I would love to see you on Wednesday the 15th for the holidays as well. He is Luke. I am Nestor. We will never stop talking about this Lamar Jackson and a loss in Pittsburgh and preparation for Cleveland. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.